Good morning, CAC. Happy Friday. Hope you are all doing well. I miss you guys, especially to my seniors. I love you guys, and I can't wait for us to get back together and to experience some of the closure that we're going to have this year. I hope you all are enjoying your Friday off of school without a whole bunch of homework, hopefully. And as you know, today is Film Friday in chapel, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but I do want to share a couple of thoughts with you from one of my favorite Marvel movies, Black Panther. You guys know that I love Marvel movies. I've talked about them in chapel before, but this one in particular has such an important message for us to hear, especially during this crazy time that we're all in. If you haven't seen Black Panther before, the movie is about this African nation of Wakanda, and Wakanda is built on the most valuable resource in the world, vibranium. And to protect the vibranium, they've hidden themselves away from the outside world with this sort of camouflage shield bubble type thing. And in the movie, Black Panther is faced with this really difficult question. And it's, what obligation does Wakanda have to the outside world? Is it right for them to hide away and to hold on to this valuable resource that they have? Or do they need to share it with the world? So I want you guys to watch the after credits scene from this movie, and in this scene Black Panther is at the United Nations making an address. The link is in the classroom, so take a minute, pause this video, click over to that other link, watch the movie clip, and I'll see you back here in just a minute. I love what Black Panther says in this clip. It says, in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. And as we see this disease spreading around us, we see all of these barriers coming up as we're trying to protect ourselves from this virus. And there's a good reason for that. But one of the side effects of that is that it leaves us isolated and cut off from a world that is in need of some hope right now and in need of some encouragement. And as Christians, it's so important for us to ask ourselves that same question that Black Panther was dealing with for the entire movie. And it's, what obligation do we have to the outside world? As everyone's putting up barriers and isolating and self-quarantining, what obligation do we have as Christians to reach out to people, to build a bridge, and just to give them that hope and that encouragement, because we have so many resources that we can share with the world. And our question for today is, are we going to hide it, or are we going to share it? A few years ago, I went to an area-wide Devo at Central, and they showed a video that was talking about all of the rules and the laws that the Jews had in the Old Testament about things that were unclean, and how you couldn't touch these things or go to these places or interact with these people, because then that would make you unclean. And the Jews lived in constant fear that something from the outside world was going to make them unclean. And then the video talked about a passage in Isaiah, where Isaiah is before the Lord, and he says, I feel unclean. I am unworthy. And an angel comes down to Isaiah and touches his lips with this hot coal. And the Lord tells him, I have made you clean. And the message of that Devo was that as Christians, we don't have to be afraid that the outside world is going to make us unclean, that we don't have to live in fear and put up a wall and keep those unclean things out, but rather we have the power of God to make the world clean. And that's why when Jesus came up to a leper and touched the leper, that he wasn't afraid of getting the disease or becoming unclean, because he knew that in his power he could make the leper clean. And for us as Christians, we have that same kind of power in us. There's a passage of scripture that I read differently now during this pandemic season, and it's in Matthew chapter 9, where Jesus says, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but it's the sick. And so as Christians, our calling goes beyond just staying inside of our own little bubbles, protecting ourselves, not coming into contact with the outside world, because the outside world is sick. And we may be afraid that if we go out there, we'll get sick too. But what God is telling us is that we have the power to go and to make the world clean. and that we have the power to build a bridge instead of a barrier, and to go and encourage someone, and to share our faith, and to not have to worry about being unclean. So today, I want to encourage you to reach out to someone. Think about what kind of obligation do we have to step out and to encourage someone, to call someone, to meet up with someone from a socially distant 6 feet if you have to, and share those valuable resources of faith that we have been given. Happy Friday. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you soon.